Yeah, so yeah, that's fine, Rohit. If people are not joining, we cannot keep waiting. So in the previous session, in yesterday's session, we talked about the data table. A few of the concepts we have already talked about. There are a few concepts that we really need to take a look into, and one out of those is like what are the dynamic actions in data table? So when we say dynamic action, so if you remember the previous, we have got these 4 actions, but sometimes let's say you wanted to enable or disable some of the actions, or you wanted to add more actions here. How you could add based on the data that is being displayed in your row. Okay, let's say for example, if your account is inactive, like if your account is active, you want this edit button to be disabled. If your account is not active, then you want that edit button to be enabled. Or similarly, if your account button is active, you might want it to add one more action. Okay, let's say something, it could be create contact or something, right? So based on these based on the data for your row, you wanted to control the actions, and either their visibility or their the number of actions that you wanted to display in the UI. Those are basically known as dynamic actions in Lightning Data Table. And depending on, as we talked about, right, depending on the information on the row label, the dynamic actions are produced. So what happens when you click on that drop down? Okay, so what it really does, it issues a synchronous call. Okay, a synchronous call is really, I would say, something that is executes in the maybe when the time is available, maybe after a second or two. It's really, but it is really not, even it does not take seconds. It is really very fast that even you will see that your menu is loading and you will see. So how we do it usually within the constructor, but I haven't tried in connected callback or disk rendered callback, but constructor works well, very well. So we really don't need to look into the other callback methods. But if you want, you can go ahead. So what we do is, as we talked about that constructor, the first statement is always going to be super. And then here we are going to define the number of columns, whatever the columns that we wanted to have here. So we have seen the previous videos, right? How we define the columns or data table. So one was the type equal to action, and where we were getting the type attributes and we were having our row actions. Okay. So this time, instead of defining it manually, what we are going to do is we are going to use a method that is going to be get row actions. You could name it whatever you want, but this is very meaningful. This is very, I would say, short and crisp to know that, okay, what it actually does. So I'm going to use get row actions only. It takes 2 parameters. One is the row. So we talked about, right, based on, depending on the information on the row. So this is whatever the row it actually has. And then done callback method. This is a callback method because we talked about, right, there is going to be a asynchronous call being issued. So if that is asynchronous call, we definitely wanted to basically make sure that we are handling the promise, whatever is being returned by the asynchronous promise. Okay, asynchronous call. That's what we are going to do here. So that's why we have here. So what we are doing is we are saying, okay, let's create an actions here. It could be simple actions, and then what we are doing is we are saying, okay, actions.push. So this is just a button that we are pushing here. We're not even doing anything, we're just pushing. Okay, but we could utilize the conditional statement here, and then within 2 milliseconds here, you could see here, quickly we are just calling these callbacks and passing these actions. So we are saying, okay, go ahead and display these actions to the users. So that's what the method is going to do, that is going to be called from constructor. Okay, and then we'll talk about inline data table, like inline editing in data table. So let's first talk about dynamic actions. So we have talked about like we have this columns here. You have seen these are the column list that we have got some multiple columns. This is the action that we have, and this action actually has a static. You cannot increase, or like you cannot disable, you cannot increase, or you cannot add or remove the action here in the array. But there, as we talked about the scenario that if the action, like if the account is active, that means the value is yes, we wanted to disable this edit button. And if the value is no, we wanted to enable that edit button. Okay. So how you are going to do is, as we talked about, we are going to have a constructor. That constructor is, the first statement is always going to be super. Now here what we are going to do is, now instead of defining the columns here, what we will do is we'll say, okay, we've got this dot columns list. We will take this, okay, we'll take this, whatever we have, we are going to say this dot column list equal to, we're just defining here, we're just defining all the values over here. And then for the actions that we've talked about, so let's take these actions. I'm going to take it out. So here what we talked about is we are going to say, okay, for the row actions, we are going to define a method that is going to be this dot get row actions. Okay, this is our method. So we will define a method called get row actions. That's going to take two parameters, that is row, you can name it anything, and then that is one is done callback. Okay, so that is done callback. You can name it anything. Again, this is also a callback function. Okay, now here what condition that we want to do is we wanted to say, okay, we are saying if our value for active variable is as yes, so we need to see what is the active value binded to, this is our field in our data, in our records. Active __ C is the field which is going to hold the value, either it is going to be yes or no. So what you could do is you could say if, and then you could say else. Okay, and before we do that, we are going to create a variable called constant. Okay, we'll say const actions, by default a blank array. Okay, and now what we will do is you'll say if row dot, and you know that this is the field name, field API name. So you can say active __ C equal to like triple equal yes. Okay, that's what you're going to do for your if and else. Now what we said is, if this is the case, we will say, okay, go ahead and push the values like in actions dot push. Okay, and we are going to only push the edit, that is going to be, it is going to be disabled as true. So we'll say disabled. So there is a attribute called disabled for the button, which is going to disable the attribute. Even it is going to work for your HTML input as well. Okay, if whatever I have copied, I'll just put it over here. So if that is not the case, what we will say is, okay, if that is not active, that means we are going to put else if, else if, where we are going to put also, we'll say explicitly if the value equal to no. Okay, that is no. If the value is blank, we really don't want it to show this action. And this time we will say disabled as false. And then at the end, what we are going to do is we are going to say, okay, let's use set timeout. That is going to basically take a function. Okay, I think this is how it takes. So the value is going to be 200, and then we are going to call this done callback, and we'll pass the actions so that it can render the value for us. Okay, that's what we have to do. So what we did is we said, okay, use the constructor and then have all the columns that you have. For actions, we are going to have the dynamic binding here. We would say type attributes, row actions equal to this dot get row actions, and this is going to get the actions for us. Okay, so this is the complete method for dynamic action. Let's go ahead and deploy this. Okay, now it's done. And if we now refresh this, and we should be able to see the dynamic actions, we should be able to see how it works, and then we'll try to do some modification. So if you click on this drop down, you see there was a spinner was loading for quite a few seconds, not even seconds, for milliseconds. This was for yes. If you go for no, you see that there is an edit button and you would be able to click on record edited. And for yes, you would see that button is disabled. So this is basically something that you could use dynamically to even you can add more actions over here as well based on whatever the data is there at your row label. Now I'm going to copy this method, okay, and then I'm going to do whatever it was there earlier. I'll just going to do Control Z for the complete code, okay. I just wanted to do one what I would say is, yeah, so I just wanted to do one kind of let's say experiment here. So what I will do is because I copied the code, I'm going to put it over here, get row actions, and we would have a constructor, okay, and then constructor, as we all know, it's going to have the super as keyword, and then we will say, okay, this dot column list basically equal to, you're going to have an array, and for this actions we are not going to have this edit here. We will only have view and delete, and edit we are going to do with the help of this method. So what we will do is we'll say, okay, let's quickly take this here and we are going to put it this dot get row actions. So what I'm trying to experiment here is, what if we have the column list defined over here with all the columns that are defined here, okay, with all the actions that is enabled by default for all the rows, and then from the constructor we are trying to add one more action that is being either enabled or disabled based on whatever the values there at the row label, and just to see if it is really going to work or not. I have not tried. I'm just trying it so that in front of all of you to see if it is going to work or not. Okay, so you see the columns are even not getting defined. We just only see the edit button. That's fine. So basically, if you really want that dynamic action, whatever we talked about, you really need to have every single columns here, okay, within your constructor, like this. And then actions as well. You could have like, you need to put actions. Let's say you've got, let's take this array, okay. Now what you have to do is here, you can just put it here. So what we said, okay, by default, our action is going to contain these these two buttons, okay. And based on whatever, either it is active or not, we are going to add one more button, edit, that is going to be in either in the form of edited or in the form of, enabled or disabled. And let's say if you say the button is active, like account is active, you also wanted to add one more action, that is, let's say new contact, okay, disabled as false. So if the account is active, you wanted to have one more additional additional action, that is new contact. You could also have that as part of your row data, the supplied row data for that data table. So that is, you would see here, now we've got our data table. This is active. If you click on, you got this edit is disabled and you got a new contact here, okay. And then similarly, if you've got no, you will see that edit is enabled, but there is no new contact there, okay. So that's basically how you would be able to add the dynamic actions, okay. So this is the one thing that we wanted to cover as part of today's session. Next thing that we wanted to cover is inline editing in data table. This is really, I would say, important concept, because most of the companies really, basically most of the clients really want the functionality for editing the record in the data table itself and then saving it from there itself. So how you could do is, this is really very easy, I would say. Everything is provided by Salesforce. Even in their documentation, all you need to do is just do the copy paste. I'm going to explain you everything. Okay. So here, what first thing that you need to do is, for example, you wanted to let the user to edit the date in the data table. So what you have to do is you just have to use this editable. This is an attribute in the column label, and you need to say editable equal to true, and it is going to make that column as editable. Okay. So let's see here how it's going to make the editable. For example, we wanted to make this annual revenue. Okay, let's say editable as true. So we just made this annual revenue editable as true, and we are also making the date, and then active we can also make, website we can make. Some of the columns you have made as editable. One thing that you really need to understand is the lookup field or the picklist field. You cannot make those as editable because there is no lookup or picklist field going to display in the data table. That is going to display in the form of text only. You cannot do that part. Okay. So now if you see here, if I hover over to the annual revenue field or to the, I would say, created date field or to the active field or website field, there is a pencil icon that comes up. Okay. This pencil icon let us make the changes. If you click on that and make the change, and then if you hit anywhere, you would see that there is a button. There are a couple of buttons which pops up, that is cancel and save. And if you click on save, that is nothing going to happen. If you click on cancel, it's going to cancel the change that you have made. Similarly, if you click on create a date, you would see a date picker coming up, and you would be easily able to pick a date. And once you make any change, it's going to show us you button. You can make the changes at multiple rows. This is no such restriction that you can only make at one place or one row. You can have, even you can change the multiple columns, and you would see that it gives you the yellow color background that makes sure, that tells you that, okay, this are all the fields that user has changed for the data table. That was just for enabling the edits. Now, if you definitely on the click of your button, you definitely wanted to save the changes. Okay. And you also wanted to know what are your data table that are having the draft values. Draft values means unsaved records, the changed values. So there are two changes that you need to put into your HTML file, into your Lightning data table tag, is the draft values. This is going to contain the records, the columns which has been changed along with the row. And this is an event which says on save. So when you click on save, like when you click on this save button, this on save event is going to be called, and you can handle it based on whatever you have. Okay. Into the JavaScript, what you have to do is you really have to define the variable that we talked about, draft values, and you need to define the method that is called as handle save. The name could be anything. Okay. And first thing that on the JavaScript method, the first thing that you would want to get is whatever all the rows has been changed, and then whatever all the columns for that row had been changed. Okay. So for that, you have to get with the help of like event.detail.draft values. In the previous session, when we talked about selected rows, so it was selected rows instead of draft values. Okay. So draft values are going to give you the complete data. And then with the help of UI record API update record method, we are going to make the changes. It is really going to be easy for us. This time we will see how you could use update record method for multiple records. And you can apply the same concept for your multiple create records as well. This is just a simple skeleton code by boilerplate code you see here. What we have got is, this is our draft values is our method. Okay, the variable name is different. So we've got draft values, this dot draft values. We're just slicing it to make sure that there are no such other things. Okay. And then what we are using is, we are saying, okay, dot map. So this dot map, again, map is array method, an array method that returns another array based on whatever the logic we have. So I'll explain this once you're working here. And then this is basically for updating the record. So let's see how we would do is we're going to add a few things here. We are going to say draft values, and we are going to create a variable called draft values. Then we are going to have on save. Okay. And then we are going to have a method called handle save. You could also have like on cancel, that event is also there. And you could also have the cancel as well. Let's define this. The first thing that we are going to define is we are going to define @track value. That is going to be draft values. And next thing that we would define is our on save method, handle save method. Okay. We have to define here, and let's say we're passing event as a value. So what we'll do is we'll say, okay, this dot draft values equal to event dot target dot draft values. And we will just have the console log to see what exactly is coming there. And the console is going to be in the form of a string. Any questions, any confusing such so far? Okay, I don't see any questions as such in the window. So I'll go ahead and move forward. So our code is already there in Salesforce. All we need to do is just refresh and make some changes at some places. Okay. I'm just making some random changes so that I can showcase you what exactly we are getting. So we have got these 3 rows which has been changed. Okay. And now if we click on save, you would see here what we got. We got arrays. We've got array. Okay. And this array is taking the ID, which ID they need to update, and which field we have changed. Okay. So this is the one object. This is another object. And this is the third one, third row, this one, where it has taken the, you see the value, the created date, and then it has taken whatever the active and then ID. So if you change multiple fields, okay, let's say if I changing 3 fields or even 4. Okay, I'm going to, let's say, okay, so this is, it's not actually taking. So that's fine. We're going, okay, it's not even taking. So that's fine. We're not able to see, we're not able to put the value, but for these values, we are able to put. So if I click on save, you will see the last one is going to have 3 fields now: created date, active, annual revenue, and for the row, the record ID. This is basically your key field. Okay. If you remember here, providing key field for your data table, this is what your key field does. It gives you the record ID for your record. And then now you've got this arrays. So within your JavaScript, what you could do is, do you remember using the syntax of update record? So first we have to import that. Okay. Update record we have to import now. Do you remember how it takes the values? It takes the record input, right? It takes update record and it takes record input. And then it returns then. That is our promise. It actually gives you the result. And then it says catch. That actually gives you the error, if there is any. And then there is a finally method that executes no matter what happens. This is what the syntax of your update record is. Now what this record input takes, let's prepare a record input. It takes constant record input, and it basically takes fields, right? Like this. It takes fields like this. It doesn't take anything else. And the fields has to be named exactly like this. Okay. Now you already have all the data here. You have 3 records here as per our current scenario. You have 3 records. And then now after the 3 records, you need to prepare this record input for each 3 records. So what, with the help of this code that we have here, is the previous one, which is basically mapping with the help, whatever we have got the values, and we are mapping all the draft values into the fields and returning. Okay, so what exactly it is doing is, it is saying, okay, let's create an array record inputs, and it is saying this dot draft values dot map. It takes one parameter, that is draft. Okay, now this draft is going to have everything. Now you cannot return. So what we did is, now we said, okay, constant fields equal to, now what we are doing is, we are saying, okay, object dot assign. Do you remember we have talked about cloning the object? And here what we said, okay, within a blank array, whatever you have in your draft, assign it. And remember, the record input takes this. This is the syntax for record input. So just return this, and it is going to return a record input for each particular record. Now what it is doing is, this is going to, this portion, what this portion is, this is the record input, and we have got multiple record inputs. What's going to be the size of this variable is 3, because current scenario, our current scenario says there are going to be 3 records. Now we don't need this. We have got 3 records, but our update records only take a single value. It updates a single record at a time. So how we are going to update all 3 records? What you could do is, you could just use a for loop on this variable, and then use this update record within the for loop. Or what you could do is, you could use a promise.all method, and you could update all the record at once. How? This is the code for that. Here we have got what we said. Okay, so if you remember, right, we have got promise.all. It takes the array and it takes one promise, like it takes promise one by one. We have seen while we were loading the external libraries. So what we said, okay, whatever the record inputs we have got, again use the array map, because this map method returns an array. So this variable is going to contain the array, the records, the number of records we have. So we say, okay, use map method, and then just map all the input and store it into the. So basically what we are trying to do here is, we are trying to say, if you have like this, we are saying promise dot all. So promise dot all takes the array here like this, right? It takes like this. It takes promise 1, it takes promise 2, like this, right? So basically it takes multiple promises that you have. Now you really don't know how many promises you have here, because this variable is going to be dynamic. So that is what it says. That is what we are saying. We are saying, okay, let's use promises. And we will say, okay, record inputs dot map, and it's going to take, you could say record input, or you could name it anything. Okay. And what we will do, we said is, okay, we said return update record and record input, because map method is going to return. So this promise is going to have now multiple records, and we are going to pass this promise here as a whole. And instead of then and catch putting here, this is how it's going to look like. And then you could have the console records. You could say console.log, and you can say records updated. And if there is any error, you could say console.error, and the error message as well. Any confusion? Anyone? Yes, Nikhil, I can go through with the code. But this time I would like to know what exactly you understood. Like, do you have any concern at certain point? Some confusion? Or where exactly you didn't understand?
So after the means we define the default parameters there in our HTML, and we use this function, right? So to update the
Yeah.
values. All right. So I just wanted to you to go through this again because I lost some of this while you were explaining. I lost the I didn't get all the whole context here actually. That's why.
So you are clear up to the variable, the HTML part, the method
Yes.
part. You clear
Yes.
up to here?
Yeah.
Okay. So anyone else has confusion on this part? Oh, seems like Nikhil, you are the only one having the issue. Okay. So basically this is, let me make it very simple now for you, for all of you. Everyone is familiar about with update record syntax, right? So I'm assuming everyone is familiar. So what we will do is now we're going to say, okay, let's quickly create record input variables here. Okay. As we already have this draft values, this is going to have nothing. This is going to have the list of all the rows which has been modified along with their fields. So I'm going to use the for each method here. And this method is going to have an item and it will go through with each item one by one. Okay. And this item is basically nothing. This is a single object like this. Let me also do the copy paste here. The item is going to be equivalent like this, like it has going to be an ID and all the fields which has been modified. And what our record input says that if we talk about the record input that we have for our update record, the structure basically that says it's going to be look like something this. It has to be a fields, and the item is something it does not have a field, but this is an object which is equivalent to this. So what we were saying is we are saying, okay, go ahead and say constant. I'm going to create a variable called fields. And instead of using item like this, because as we talked about, right, arrays are basically taking the same reference. We are going to do the object silo copy with the help of object assign method. And we will say, okay, assign whatever you have within this item into a blank array, and whatever the outcome you get, assign it into the fields attribute. And then what you do is you're going to create another variable called constant that is going to be record input. And we are going to do the same thing. And this is where we find our update record input. And here what we will do is we will say record inputs dot push. And here I'm going to say, okay, use update record and then push it into the array record inputs. Okay, this part is now this part is now no longer needed. So far, everyone is clear with this part. I don't see yes or no. Okay. Rohit, are you clear? I knew it, you're sleeping. Okay. So now comes the second part. So we already done everything here. This is also not needed because we already have the promises here now. We've got the fields. We have got the promises. We got like we keep adding the update record into our array. So this promise part is also not needed now. Now instead of passing these promises, we are going to pass this record inputs here, because this record inputs is basically containing the update records, and this update record is nothing, it is a promise. Okay, now this part is also clear with everyone. Is it clear? Okay, so now let's deploy this code and then see if this is working or I have to debug the code. So I'm going to change annual revenue. I'm going to change active from yes to no. This is a picklist field that, and I know it has only two values, yes and no. So I'm using the exact same value there. Okay. And for this row, I'm using changing the date. And for this row, only the date. And for this row, from yes to no. Okay. And let's click on save. And we got the error. You see, we got the error. It says an error occurred while trying to update. Please, what it gives unable to create fields, created date. So created date field is something which we cannot really update. Okay. So it is giving us this error. This is the error message that I am going to keep it, because we will need this in future purpose. So let's keep it. Now let's see. That means our code is basically working and we are able to see if it is giving us, even if it is giving us the error, but that means our code is working perfectly fine. Now let's go ahead and change the revenue. Okay. And okay. So this is basically the revenue that we have, and then I'm going to change from no to yes. And yes, okay. These are the 3-4 rows that we have. Now click on save. And you got record updated. But you see here the save has not been changed to whatever we have. The cancel has like this is not basically being displayed there, right? Save has to go on, cancel has to go on, these values has to go on. So one thing that we missed is once everything is done in the finally, what we have to do is we have to say this dot draft values equal to blank array. That means now there are no draft values. Okay. This is the one thing that we missed it, and we have to put it over here. And let's now refresh. Okay, our code is also there, so we'll refresh it again. But once you see here, after refreshing, you would see your values has been populated here. Okay. I'm also going to now change the annual revenue for all the accounts here in such a way, very certain number, so that we don't get any issues. So you see here, right? Every row has been changed, most of them. And let's quickly change from now yes to no. Okay, we've got it here from yes to no, and click on save. The record has been updated. The cancel and save button has been gone, but the data is yet not refreshed. You clearly see here, the data has not been refreshed. And if you now refresh this page, you would see the data has been refreshed and you're able to see the details here. Okay. You're also able to see the number. You're also able to see the checkbox, and every single thing is coming here. Now, how to refresh this data? So to refresh this data, there is a method. Okay. So we'd say import, and we would say refresh apex is the method from @Salesforce apex. This refresh apex is used to refresh the data for refresh your wired data. Okay, wired data. So if you're getting this query, we are getting the data we are getting from the wire method. We're making some changes. We wanted to refresh the data. In that case, we are going to use refresh apex. Okay. So what we have this complete data. So we are going to now make it as track so that we can refresh it. This is our data which is being displayed in the UI. You clearly see. And then what we will do is here, we would say once everything is successful done, draft values are done, we are going to say this, not this. We would say refresh apex, and we would say this dot data. So this refresh apex is going to refresh the data table data, and it will showcase you the latest data that you are looking for. So I'm going to make it as no here, and this as well no, and this revenue is also going to be less. Okay, and then going to save it. So you could see, okay, the record is updated, but the refresh is still not working because it has to update the values. So this refresh data could be before we set the draft values. I can't recall that, so I might need to check this. So we could check quickly here how it actually works. But that is the method basically. Refresh, is it the one? No. Refresh apex in LWC. Okay. Okay, it's not the one. Yeah, here it is. Salesforce. Our method is correct. And we should be calling here. You could see here that is the correct place from where we should be calling. Okay. So there is a catch here that I noticed. And I got to know that why this refresh apex is not working. And there is a reason behind refresh apex not working. Refresh apex actually does not work when you are getting the data like this. If you are using the data in this way, like if you're using wired method, this refresh apex is not going to work. It's not going to refresh the data at all. The refresh apex only works when you are using wire method like this. Because it's going to refresh the data, it's going to, it's not going to have, it should not have any kind of modifications or something like that. So you cannot really use that refresh apex if you're using this way. So if you want to use the other way, then you have to basically, if you want to use the refresh apex, you have to go with the other way of your wire method. But what if you want to basically use the refresh, you wanted to refresh the page using this way only, then you have to go with the imperative apex. I'll not basically go there now, but what we have to do is you have to remove this catchable equal to true, and then instead of wire method, use the imperative apex. Okay, and then call this imperative apex from your connected callback, and that same method is going to be called once your records are updated from the then method of your promise. That way the value is going to get updated every time you make the changes into the data table. But if you are only displaying the simple data table, let's say you don't want the link, you don't want to display the lookup fields and all, it is very simple data table, then you could easily use the wire method with the property instead of having a wire method with the method. Okay, is it clear now? I don't hear back anything. Which part? So this refresh apex method works whenever you are calling the apex method like this, account data. Okay. So when you are calling the apex method like this without using the method like wired account or wired contact or something else, if you use this value here within the apex, this is a refresh apex. If you use, where is that? Yeah. If you use account data, that is your wired property, this refresh apex is going to work. And it's really not going to work with this way. Okay. The other way is, if you want, because you are doing the manipulation here, so you cannot really go with this way. Okay. You cannot really go with this. So what you really have to do is, you have to go with the other, I would say, workaround, that is using the imperative apex. That is, I'm just showcasing it over here. What you have to do is, you have to really remove this catchable equal to true. Okay. And then create a method, maybe you can say handle, let's say a fetch account. Okay. And this is going to call, this method is basically going to call your handle fetch account method, where you would handle, sorry, it is going to call your account list method, where you're going to handle the response, sorry, you're going to handle the callback functions, the promise functions, that is then and catch and optional finally. And in the, then you are going to do all the manipulation here. This method is going to be called from the connected callback, that the method that you've just created for handling the, like calling the method. And the same method you would call here once your record has been updated successfully from the promise then method of your promise.all functions. And if you do this way, it's going to work perfectly fine. Now, as we have got two different things, we don't want it to, maybe I can go ahead and comment it out. So we've got so once you convert your catchable method to non-catchable method, sometimes the catch takes time to get cleared. So if we don't see the change for the first time, that doesn't mean our code is not working. There could be a possibility that the catch has not been cleared yet. So we're just changing it from no to yes for the third row, which is this Burlington Textile Corporation of America. And you see here, it has been changed to yes. Okay. So that is the other way to refresh your page. Is it clear now? So next thing that we are going to talk about, this is a very important use case. I think most of the project, 90 or even I would say 99% of the project basically use this component called as lookup component. Previously, we have already talked about creating a pick list component, right? Earlier we talked about. So lookup component, as we've seen, this is a standard screenshot. If you see where you click on the search button and you see the account, this is for the account. So you see the accounts like the name, the icon. That's what we see. We are not going to implement this new action, but we are going to implement this part only. Like, and if you select here, this is like this. If you go to account, try to create any account, go to parent account, you will see there are options coming. And if you select any of them, it's going to get selected and display like this. Okay. So that's what we are going to implement. So how we are going to implement is, the very first thing that we need is, we need to have a Lightning Web component, and we are going to create a component called lookup, or you could say lookup component. It could be anything, okay? And this component, very first thing that we will do is, we will expose it to the Lightning UI, okay, Lightning App Builder, and I'll give it a master label as lookup component, LWC target. For now, I'm only exposing the default target, that is record page, app page, and home page. Into the lookup, into our HTML file, we are going to have a lightning card, and that lightning card is going to have something called like title. We could say lookup component. Icon name is going to be same as it is a standard column account. We don't need footer. And in the body part, we are just going to have a simple, what simple? Let me talk about. Once you click on plus, what it is, basically it is a search button, right? It is a basically an input where you could search, you could type anything, and it will show us the account based on whatever the keyword you have typed, right? So we are going to have a lightning input, the very first thing. So we will say LWC colon input. Type, this time we will say type is search. Variant, we will say standard, or maybe we'll say, yeah, it is standard. What is name? Let's say, you could say lookup. Label, for now we are going to say parent account. Placeholder type here or something, or maybe nothing. That's it. Let's go ahead and deploy this. This is the first part that we have to do. And once we are done with the deployment, get back to the home page of your application and add the component that we have created, that is lookup component. So this is our component. We're going to just put it here, and you could see that we're getting the text coming up with the search icon on the left instead of right. And we could type here whatever we want. The first achievement, the first step we have achieved. Okay, the first milestone is achieved now. Now, again, I would showcase you here. Let's say duplicate, and we're going to have account new, and forget about this coming up. Maybe once you type here sfdc, it actually gives you the list of accounts, right? And if you hover over, or if you select, it actually lets you select. If you click on the icon, and it actually, the close icon, it actually again opens up the text box. So basically there is a list which is coming up. So how we could prepare? We definitely need this kind of list. So if you notice, this particular is a component. This is a piece of component, okay? Whereas these are the items. So there is a for loop running behind the scene, and within the for loop, each and every item is getting rendered. Clearly, it is clearly being seen. Each and every account is getting rendered. Okay. So how we are going to do is, we are going to say, okay, we have got SLDS. We will say SLDS lookup. And the first link that you will find is, click on that. Now you would clearly see this is something you definitely might want it to have. Or if you keep scrolling, you would see this is your base. If you click, you see the values here. You also see the clear, you see here the icon is coming up perfectly fine at the right. If you want, you could take the CSS. Or you would see here, right? Most of the things basically are coming, you can just take the CSS out of it, and your UI is really going to look like perfect. Take them. And you could see this is the selected one. This is on the basically top pop-up. So which one you would like to take? You could take any one of them. Maybe you could say this one or this one. You could take any one which you like. Okay. So I really like this one. I can take this. So how you would do is just click on this clipboard. Okay. And if you go to your HTML and paste it, it's really going to paste it in such a raw format that you are not even going to recognize it. Okay. So to do this, before you paste it, you could go to a website called HTML formatter, that is basically freeformatter.com. Paste it and click on format HTML in a new window, and you will see a formatted CSS and HTML. Now copy it and paste it here. Still, if you have this indent rainbow plugin installed, you might see the same error, but I can just go ahead and then indent it. So now our code looks good. What we did is we just went ahead and copy pasted. That's it. We did nothing. And now you see there is some error here. So we could go ahead and get rid of this error. There is autocomplete off. So we could also get rid of this. That's fine. We really don't need. And I think most of the things are good. Okay. So let's go ahead and now deploy this code. So what we are doing is we're just doing step by step. And now if you refresh this page, we would see two text area. We should see, you see here, there is one, this is the one which is not even displaying the icon. This is also not displaying the icon, but CSS looks good. Okay. The HTML looks good. So now to display the icon, what you have to do is, so if you see here, there is something called, they have used SVG, and for SVG, they have provided some URL here. So that said, assets, icon, utility, sprite, whatever the icon they have, and they are just putting it over here. And the icons are not getting loaded. So to load these icons, what you have to do is basically, you have to use a few things that you need to prepend. I hope my website is working today. Okay, thank God. So we're going to, I'm just taking the particular keyword that we need to put. I really can't remember that. So that keyword is, okay, where is that? Yes, this is the one that you have to use. So what you need to prepend is you need to prepend apex pages /SLDS/latest. That is what you have to prepend against every icon that you wanted to display with the help of your SVG. Okay, and you've got this icon. Now there is one thing that you need to see here. This one you see here, what exactly it is saying is utility. This is basically the utility. If you remember, we talked about how we get the icons. So this utility, this is the utility is the category, and search is the icon you wanted to display. Similarly here, standard is the category, account is the icon you wanted to display. So you can change the category, you can change the icon name, and it's going to display the same icon that you want. Okay. Now, after making the changes, if you go ahead and deploy this and then refresh this page, now you would see the search icon is coming, you would see the account icon is coming, but the padding is not coming at all. So that part you can definitely do it. Maybe you could just have a division tag here on the top itself, and then the division tag on the bottom, just to give it a proper spacing. And you could say SLDS padding, instead of horizontal, you could say around small, and then get rid of the previous input that we have created and just deploy this. So with the help of the CSS, with the help of our SLDS, we're able to just at least prepare the wire map. Okay, framework, we are able to, not framework. It should be around is small, not, there was a typo mistake. So we are able to basically develop the wireframe here. We are able to see the pop-up coming up. We are able to see the icons are coming up. We are able to see the label is coming up, and every single thing is coming as per our need. Okay. You could also type here, you could maybe type ABC. It's not going to change anything, but you could see that you are able to type it. Okay. Now, next thing that you would want, because this is a static text, you could see here, right? These are 1, 2, 3. And you would have the dynamic records. You would have the dynamic. Okay. So let's first create a lookup class. We will create a class called lookup controller. Okay. And this class is going to return, for now it's going to return the same set of records that we have here. Okay. It's going to return the same 10 records for us. We're going to call this class from the JavaScript for our lookup component. And as this is an imperative Apex call, so I'm going to just quickly take the help from my previous JavaScript file. We really don't need this part. And we're done. Okay. So just calling it, and we are having a track here, let's say at the rate track data. And that's it. I just copy pasted. I hope everyone is clear so far what we have covered, including calling the Apex class, creating the Apex class for now with the static values. Everyone is clear with this? Anyone has any doubts or something? Okay, so now let's say you've got this 10 records here, right? You definitely wanted to display those 10 records here instead of these 3 static keywords, the static values. So how you would do is, you would see here, if you come back here, you would see there is a UL, and within the UL there is LI, LI2, LI3. So if I go, what if I go ahead and get rid of these LI1 and LI2? Okay. If I get rid of these LI1 and LI2, I would see only one LI, that is line item or list item. And then we have got unordered list on the top. And we make the change, we refresh this, and you would see that there is only one item coming up. Okay. Now we know that we have got some values in the data attribute. And now what I can do is, if I iterate this, if I could iterate this item as many times as I have the records, for example, 10 records. So if I could iterate this with 10 times and I can display the information, my work is done. So this li part I could put within the for each. Okay. So this is my li part which I'm putting. Oops, what happened? So I'm going to put li part within the for each. Okay. So first of all, our data is data. So we are going to put data here. And instead of contact, we are going to see item. Okay. And for the li, we are going to say key. And key is going to be item.id. And the here for the division option 16s, we are going to get rid of. And now let's go ahead and deploy this. So this is a bit, sorry, we have just deployed. Okay. Now what we have to do is, we again do the same, refresh this page, and you would see that you are able to see 10 records here. And you clearly see, right, it has automatically given us the scroll bar after a certain height. And that's what the standard lookup gives us. Like if you have multiple record, it gives us the scroll bar. Okay. And that's what it is coming up here. And you could see like the same information is coming. That is fine. But you see that there are 10 records coming up. Now you definitely wanted to showcase your name, account object, and whatever you have, whatever it is here. So now you can come back here and you could see this is the basically place where the account name is getting displayed. Now you could say, okay, I'm going to display item.name here. I don't want it to display anything else, but I really wanted to display the object API name. And that's it. You could just go ahead and deploy it. And you would see the name of your account this time, whatever the account is being queried from Salesforce. You could clearly see here. So far, everyone is clear. We have not done anything. We've just prepared the wireframe for our lookup object. Everything is clear, everyone? So I don't hear any questions. So that's what basically I wanted to cover today. We are going to continue from here itself, from where we are leaving it tomorrow itself. So we'll meet tomorrow.